Whenever I think of space travel, the first thing that comes to mind is Star Trek. Whenever I think of time travel, the first thing that comes to mind is Back to the Future. But whenever I think of sci-fi as a genre, as a whole, the first thing that comes to mind is Doctor Who. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster. The 50th anniversary of Doctor Who draws near, and I can think of no better time to talk about my favorite spacefaring Time Lord. However, before we get this show on the road, I just want to clarify that this won't be one of my traditional honest reviews, for two reasons. First reason is that there are already plenty of people on this website that review and talk about Doctor Who, so it's kind of pointless for me to try and review the show as a whole, if everything that could be said about it has been said already. And secondly, as I stated before, this show has been around for 50 years. I could make a 12-hour video and I would only still be scratching the surface. This quite simply is intended to be a brief retrospect of my 20-odd years being a faithful fan, and my personal experience with the 11 actors who have played the Doctor and their respective eras. So now, for the benefit of those of you who should seriously be returning your geek cards, the plot. In the history of fiction, there are many different heroes who specialize in lots of different situations. If you're under vampire attack, call Buffy. If your house is haunted by ghosts, call the Ghostbusters. If the Earth is under the threat of a mass alien invasion, bring in the Justice League. But there is only one hero who specializes in the impossible. Who do you think? He is a man of many faces. His real name is a mystery. We only know him as the Doctor. Hence, the first question. The question that must never be answered. The question that is hidden in plain sight. Doctor Who. The Doctor is an alien, a Time Lord, member of an ancient race who are the keepers of the secrets of time travel. The difference between the Doctor and his fellow Time Lords is that the Doctor is the only one who uses his gifts to help others and make a difference. He is the original space cowboy who rolls into town in his magical time-traveling phone box, saves the day, and then disappears, not even stopping to be thanked. And the majority of the time, he saves worlds, solar systems, hell, all of reality with just a little ingenuity. As an alien, the Doctor has at least two superhuman abilities that are worth noting. The first is his ability to regenerate. If the Doctor is ever mortally wounded, he can save himself by regenerating into a new body. Initially, this was just a cheap way for the creators of the show to justify a new actor taking over the role of the Doctor. But it has now become one of the key factors to the show's longevity. When the Doctor regenerates, he also develops new quirks and personality traits, as every actor who has ever played the Doctor has played the character in his own way. But three personality traits have always remained the same. The Doctor is very brave, he is very heroic, and he's very, very, very smart. The Doctor is so smart, he makes MacGyver look like Mac Dumbass. The other superhuman ability the Doctor has, which in my opinion is far more impressive than his ability to regenerate, is his uncanny knack for talking incredibly out of this world gorgeous women into joining him in his adventures. How the hell does he do it? The secrets of his appeal to the opposite sex is almost as mysterious as his real name. Lastly, the only other truly important thing you need to be familiar with within the Doctor's mythology is his time machine, the TARDIS, time and relative dimension in space. Well, actually, it's not just a time machine, it's also his spaceship and his home.
What's the TARDIS? It's my home.
So yes, the TARDIS is the Enterprise, the DeLorean, and the Batcave all rolled into one. Eat your heart out, boys. Oh, and it's dimensionally transcendental. What the hell does that mean?
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I hadn't noticed.
So, explain to me how this TARDIS is larger on the inside than the out.
All right, I'll show you. It's because insides and outsides are not in the same dimension. Which box is larger?
That one.
Now which is larger?
That one.
But it looks smaller.
Well, that's because it's further away.
Exactly. If you could keep that exactly that distance away and have it here, the large one would fit inside the small one.
Now here's the #1 TARDIS question I always get from non-Whovians. Why the hell does the TARDIS look like a 1950s police telephone box? You see, the TARDIS has a chameleon circuit, which allows it to blend in to whatever particular time and space the TARDIS happens to land in. If it lands in ancient Rome, it would look like a column. If it lands on Endor, it would look like a pine tree. So when the TARDIS first landed on Earth back in 1963 in London, it assumed the shape of a police box, which were very common at the time. But then the chameleon circuit malfunctioned, and the TARDIS got stuck in the shape of a police box permanently. Alright, that's enough exposition. Now let's do what the Doctor does best and go to the past, as we delve into my own personal Who history. I don't ever recall a time when I wasn't aware of who the Doctor was. To me, he always was. Back when I was growing up in Puerto Rico in the 80s, I used to watch Doctor Who dubbed into Spanish. And as a matter of fact, we actually didn't call it Doctor Who. We called it El Doctor Misterio con Tom Baker. Whovians have a saying, you never forget your first Doctor. And like most people on this side of the pond, the first Doctor that I was ever exposed to was Tom Baker. As a child, he was the closest thing I had to an imaginary friend. He was this perfect whimsical space wizard who always knew what to say and what to do. To the Doctor, nothing is impossible. As a child, that always gave me a sense of hope. As a kid, I knew nothing about the regenerations, and for most of my life, I was completely unaware of the other 7 actors who had played the character at the time. From my point of view, Tom Baker was the only Doctor. Hell, I didn't become aware of the other incarnations of the Doctor until I was in high school. Interesting fact, back in 1996, I logged on to the internet for the very first time. I looked up 3 things: Weird Al, Darkwing Duck, and Doctor Who, finding out that there was a vast hidden legacy behind the show that I had loved for so many years was like finding a secret tomb full of treasure. After that, I did manage to catch a few episodes with Jon Pertwee and Sylvester McCoy, but even then, I could only see Tom Baker as the Doctor. So fast forward to 2005, where after a 16-year hiatus, where the most we saw of the Doctor was in the failed made-for-TV movie, the show was back, and I was not excited. At all. Very little about the new show's advertisements reminded me of Doctor Who, or at least the Doctor Who that I knew. But I have to give major props to the Sci-Fi Channel, because they did a spectacular job of advertising the show and making it feel like an event. So I gave in and checked it out anyway. I watched the first 3 episodes and I didn't like them at all. Why? Because in 2005, I was still stuck on Tom Baker. Yes, that's how powerful a connection I had with his version of the Doctor. To me, the new series just wasn't the Doctor Who that I remembered. A couple of years went by and at times friends would recommend me episodes, and I would check them out and enjoy them, but I never saw anything that turned me into a devoted fan of the new Who. And then, there was Tennant. David Tennant is solely responsible for my regeneration as a Doctor Who fan, and my acceptance of the new series. Long story short, David Tennant was the first actor to play the Doctor who was originally a fan. His love for the show and his constant references and nods to the classic Who inspired me as a fan. And like the Doctor, I went back in time and slowly and patiently watched the entirety of the series in chronological order. So this is my experience with the 11 Doctors. Let's begin with the original, the wise old grandfather. The first Doctor, William Hartnell. The crotchety, grumpy curmudgeon who couldn't pilot the TARDIS. His trademark was getting his companions' names wrong. Now, I apologize for starting this on a sour note, but this is my least favorite Doctor and my least favorite era. Now please, don't get me wrong, I don't hate William Hartnell. In fact, I agree with Nash. The Doctor has never been played by a bad actor. And yes, I understand that this being the first era, that the show had major budget constraints. And that no one was truly certain what they wanted the show to be, educational or science fiction. I understand all this, and I sympathize. Now what's my issue with this era? The pacing was terribly slow, to the point that it was the era that took me the longest to watch, since I would lose interest and stop watching for weeks at a time. Now I can usually contend with bad pacing, as long as the characters are good, but honestly, the original companions were pretty lackluster. And on top of it all, the first Doctor was so senile and so mean that I found him hard to like.
Now, I suggest we take a walk along the beach and try and find a spot where the cliffs run down to sea level.
Yeah, but that could be miles. It'd be much quicker to go up here.
Yes, so possibly it might, but I'm not a mountain goat, and I prefer walking to any day, and I hate climbing.
And yes, I know, he mellowed out towards the end. But man, did he pull some major doozies before that happened. For example, did you know that the original premise of the show was that the Doctor got his companions lost in time and space because he didn't know how to pilot the TARDIS? In the first episode, he almost bludgeons an injured caveman to death with a rock because he felt like the guy was slowing him down. And did you know that the reason that the Doctor and his companions were first captured by the Daleks on Skaro was because the Doctor lied to his companions and told them that they needed to search the Dalek city for Mercury to fix the fluid link on the TARDIS, even though there was nothing wrong with it. And why did he lie? Cause that was the only way that he could get his companions to go exploring the planet with him. Way to go, Grandpa.
Rule 1, the Doctor lies.
If you're a fan of the first era, all the power to you. All I'm saying is that it wasn't for me. And it definitely did not make me look forward to sitting through the eras of two more old guys before I got to Tom Baker. But boy was I happy to find out that I didn't have to wait until the fourth Doctor to witness the sci-fi awesomeness that I craved. And with that, we move on to the Cosmic Hobo. The second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. He is the terrific time-traveling tramp. He hated violence and had a lovable, sweet demeanor. And his trademark was playing the recorder. Catchphrase?
Oh my giddy aunt!
Patrick Troughton ushered a lot of the Doctor's trademarks. The sonic screwdriver, unit, his tumultuous relationship with his fellow Time Lords, and most importantly, the tradition of each actor playing the Doctor his own way. The second Doctor was the polar opposite of the first. He was fatherly and kind. He never wanted credit for his good deeds, and he would often save the day with simple misdirection. While the second era was equally as slow-paced as the first, it was made far more enjoyable by Troughton's wonderfully endearing and often comical performance as the second Doctor. He was also the first Doctor whose companions were as multi-layered and as interesting as the Doctor himself. And of course, I'm referring to his final companions, Jamie McCrimmon and Zoe Harriet. Jamie was a badass Scottish Highlander who was all brawn and no brains, but he was unquestionably loyal to the Doctor and would defend him at any cost. Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines' chemistry was undeniable, and that's why it doesn't surprise me that they worked together for as long as they did.
You look very nice in that dress, Victoria.
Thank you. Don't you think it's a bit...
A bit short? Oh, I shouldn't worry about that. Look at Jamie's.
Hey, I'll have you know that... Oh, aye.
And let's not forget about Zoe. While Jamie was the brute from the past, Zoe was the girl genius from the future, and they complemented each other admirably. It breaks my heart that the BBC junked so many episodes from this era, because I would love to see it all in full. But what I did see was great, and made me fall under the impression that it couldn't get any more awesome than this. And then came the delightfully dapper Duke of Danger. The third Doctor, Jon Pertwee. Regenerated and exiled on Earth for breaking the laws of time, the Doctor has no choice but to become a member of UNIT, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, and help protect the Earth from all manner of alien threats. While the first two Doctors found violence appalling, the third Doctor embraced it with reckless abandon. That's right, he knew Venusian karate and he wasn't afraid to use it. Like this, and that, and one of these, and don't forget this one. You want some 2C Devil? You want some shit? Oh! His catchphrase?
I reversed the polarity of the neutron flow.
Reversing the polarity?
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow.
Really shouldn't take that long just to reverse the polarity. That must be a bit out of practice.
I freaking love this era. The pacing finally got up to speed. We finally got to see the Doctor in color for the first time. Jon Pertwee wasn't cool. He was super cool. Jon Pertwee was so cool, he made a lisp sound cool.
Dr. John Smith.
Not only did we get great pacing, action-packed stories, and a kick-ass Doctor, but we had what is, in my humble opinion, the greatest supporting cast Doctor Who has ever had. Every companion during this era was great. The super brainy secret agent Liz Shaw, the dim-witted but indiscriminately adorable hippie Jo Grant, and of course, everyone's favorite intrepid feminist journalist, Sarah Jane Smith, played by the late great Elizabeth Sladen. And of course, you can't talk about the Doctor without bringing up the man who is the Commissioner Gordon to the Doctor's Batman, the Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lettered Stewart. Hell yeah, Nicholas Courtney, agent of UNIT. Oh, and there's one more guy. He's really important. He's my favorite Doctor Who villain. What's his name again? Ah yes, the Master. And I mean no disrespect to Anthony Ainley or John Sim, who were both awesome as the Master, but in my humble opinion, Roger Delgado is still the best. He was just a magnificently devious bastard, and I like how he did respect the Doctor. He just had no problem killing him if it suited his needs.
You're a good doctor, but you're not good enough.
But you haven't seen the quality of my footwork yet.
Watching this era in full made me a huge fan of Jon Pertwee, and turned him into one of my all-time favorite Doctors, right up there with Tom Baker and David Tennant. It was really sad to see him go, but it was time to make way for the whimsical Wizard of Wonder and Whimsy. The Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker. I think Verity Lambert hit the nail on the head when she said that Tom Baker's mass appeal as the Doctor stemmed from the fact that he never let you forget that the Doctor was an alien. The Fourth Doctor always stuck out even on his own planet. He was an outsider. He was a bombastically brash bohemian who dressed like a thrift store exploded on him. And he didn't care. His trademark was his ridiculously long multicolored scarf that will forever be linked to the Doctor's mythology no matter how many times he changes his wardrobe. His catchphrase?
Would you like a jelly, baby? Careful, jelly, baby. Now drop your weapons, or I'll kill him with this deadly jelly, baby.
Like I said, Tom Baker was my favorite Doctor for many years, and with good reason. He starred in a lot of my favorite Doctor Who stories, like Genesis of the Daleks, The Talents of Wayne Chan, The Deadly Assassin, and The Invasion of Time. My favorite era of the classic series begins with Jon Pertwee's second season, which introduces the Master, and runs through Tom Baker's first 4 seasons. These 8 seasons, in my opinion, contain the greatest number of consecutive good episodes in the classic series.
Even the sonic screwdriver won't get me out of this one.
Now let's talk companions. Tom Baker inherited Sarah Jane Smith from Jon Pertwee, and as good as they were together, I feel her chemistry with Tom Baker was a million times better, as they gave the tough Sarah Jane a lot more opportunities to be funny.
Forget the Zeus plug, I'll have the sonic screwdriver.
Ooh, and boy, am I sick of that sonic screwdriver!
Sarah Jane was the first and for many years the only companion that I knew. Strangely enough, as an adult, I found out that I had seen full Doctor Who serials in which Tom Baker had a different companion, and I was under the mistaken assumption that his companion was still Sarah Jane. Her departure was sad, but it was followed by another awesome companion, the ultra-feral and badass cave girl Leela, played by Louise Jameson. Her relationship with the Doctor was hilarious.
Doctor? Can I stop now?
If you want to.
It will not affect this.
Affect this? Oh, it's a yo-yo. It's a game. I thought you were enjoying it.
Enjoying it? You said I had to keep it going up and down. I thought it was part of the magic.
Magic, Leela. Magic?
I know. There's no such thing as magic.
Exactly. To the rational mind, nothing is inexplicable.
Very much in the same vein as My Fair Lady, with the Doctor constantly trying to educate her and trying to lead her away from her heathen ways.
These clothes are ridiculous. Why must I wear them?
Because you can't go walking around Victorian London in skins. You'd frighten the horses.
But Leela was as beautiful as she was deadly.
What's this?
The James Thorne?
Yes, I thought I told you not to carry...
He was trying to kill you.
Oh. Oh, well, in that case, you'd better come along.
While my favorite era begins with the introduction of the Master, it ends with Leela's departure. And no, I have nothing against the Fourth Doctor's other companions. Romana 1 and 2, and there were some good stories after the Invasion of Time. Just not as many that appealed to me fully. And things got even worse when John Nathan Turner took over as showrunner. But more on that later. Oh, and yes, this era also introduced K9. Not a fan.
Insufficient data.
Yeah, you never fucking know the answer when it's important.
In conclusion, I say this. Tom Baker's Doctor was an important part of my childhood, right up there with comics, wrestling, and Star Wars. He taught me to be smart rather than tough, and to be brave no matter the odds. In my time with this show, I have only cried during the regenerations of 2 Doctors. The first was Tom Baker.
It's the end. But the moment has been prepared for.
Now let's move on to that courageous cricketeering cavalier. The 5th Doctor, Peter Davison. After nearly 15 years of older men playing the Doctor, we got ourselves our first young Doctor, played by the dashing Peter Davison. For however alien Tom Baker's Doctor was, Davison's was relatable and down to earth. He was peaceful and mellow, but when there was a call to arms, he was always in the front lines. His trademarks included his affinity for the game of cricket and that enigmatic stick of celery on his lapel.
Doctor, why do you wear a stick of celery in your lapel?
Does it offend you?
No, I'm just curious.
Safety caution. I'm allergic to certain gases in the praxis range of the spectrum.
Well, how does the celery help?
If the gas is present, the celery turns purple.
Then what do you do?
I eat the celery. If nothing else, I'm sure it's good for my teeth.
Bright choice, celery, but fair play to you, not a lot of men can carry off a decorative vegetable.
Shut up!
Now please listen very, very closely to what I'm about to say, because I really don't want to be misquoted here. I like Peter Davison. I think he is a fine choice to play the Doctor. In fact, I was beside myself when he did that crossover charity special with David Tennant. What I'm not a big fan of is his era, in which once again, the pacing slowed down to a crawl. Even Peter Davison himself agrees that the writing wasn't that great, and that if more stories would have been as good as his final episode, The Caves of Androzani, he would have stuck around for more than 3 seasons. This trend of slow-paced, poorly written stories did not begin with Peter Davison's era. It actually started during Tom Baker's last 2 seasons, when the aforementioned John Nathan Turner took over and all the changes that were made to the show were pretty much cosmetic, as opposed to improving the writing or the production value of the series. Also, Davison's era suffered from TMPT. Too many people in the TARDIS! Holy shit did this guy have a lot of companions. Tegan, Nyssa, Turlo, Chameleon the expensive paperweight, and Edric that know-it-all bastard. Kind of hard to develop characters when you have way too many of them running around. Now, does this mean that I didn't like any of the stories during this era? No. There were still some great ones, like Earthshock, the Audrid Undead, the Resurrection of the Daleks, and the 20th anniversary multi-Doctor special, The 5 Doctors. Ultimately, Davison did his best with what he had, and he performed admirably. Now let's move on to the eloquent, eccentric, egotistical cat badge enthusiast. The 6th Doctor, Colin Baker. He was a loud, overbearing, glory-hogging egomaniac who had all the right to be. The guy saved the universe on a daily basis. He had all the right in the world to brag.
Then stay behind! This is work for heroes, not for faint-hearted girls!
I always loved it every time someone attacked Colin Baker's Doctor. He would always get this hilarious look on his face as if almost to say, do you even know who you're fucking with? Now, I want to go ahead and clear the air, as the 6th Doctor carries the absurd reputation of being the worst Doctor. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that that is bullshit. Colin Baker is awesome. Yes, his premiere episode, The Twin Dilemma, is one of the worst in the entirety of the series. Yes, his costume is an eyesore.
You can't go out dressed like that.
Yes, his continuity is a nightmare. And yes, His regeneration was really haphazard and underwhelming. And yes, I'm fully aware that Colin Baker faced some strenuous circumstances behind the scenes during his time as the Doctor. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about this great character played by a great actor. I genuinely enjoyed his era. The pacing picked up and the dull moments were few and far between. His companions were nothing to write home about, but at least they weren't annoying or superfluous. I actually liked the trial of the Time Lords. While the story has its problems, I still enjoyed it for what it was. It's sad that his era was cut short, but Colin Baker made every moment count.
Let's exercise the brain cells for once, shall we? Rather than the muscles.
And now it's time for that magnificently Machiavellian maestro of mischief.
The Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy.
There is a reason why Linkara worships the ground this man walks on. That is because he's awesome squared.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away. Who's got time to watch an explosion?
His trademarks included his hat twirling and his signature question mark umbrella. He was just as intense and epic as Jon Pertwee's Doctor, but McCoy relied more on elaborate planning and manipulation rather than getting his hands dirty. If there is one crossover that I always wanted to see in the Doctor Who universe, it would have to be between the two action Doctors. The Daleks would exterminate themselves if they saw these two coming. While my two favorite classic Doctors are Tom Baker and Jon Pertwee, Sylvester McCoy's Doctor had two things that no other Doctor will ever have. Number one, he had Ace, played by the lovely and talented Sophie Aldred. In my personal opinion, Ace is the greatest companion of them all.
Well, it's not my fault this decade's got no street cred.
She is a teenage girl who is an explosives expert. I'll repeat that, just in case it didn't sink in the first time. She is an explosives expert.
Ace, you said 10 seconds.
Nobody's perfect, Professor.
She's a scrapper, a tomboy, and unlike the rest of the companions, she doesn't run away from trouble. She goes out looking for it.
You destroyed it.
I aimed for the eyepiece.
She doesn't give a shit what you think. She rarely needs to be rescued, and the only person whose opinion she even remotely cares about is the Doctor. And even then, she will go against his instructions if the situation demands it. And the second thing that the Seventh Doctor has over the rest is remembrance of the Daleks. Fanboys and fangirls, this is the single greatest episode of the original run. I could watch this episode 10 times in a row and not get tired of it. I don't wish to spoil it, so all I'll say is this: that not only does it contain connections to the beginning of the show, but it serves as another chapter of the Doctor's continuous battle with the Daleks. But it also works as an allegory of the racial issues of the era, which sadly are still relevant today. Anyway, in spite of Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred's collective awesomeness,
Come on, Ace. We've got work to do.
this was the time in which Doctor Who was cancelled, and it went into its infamous 16-year hiatus, or as I like to call it, the dark period. But amidst the darkness, a shining light appeared on the horizon.